A wealthy man discovered a little girl huddled on the street, clutching a baby in her frail arms. Her answer, when asked where she came from, left him stunned. San Jose, USA, known for its picturesque cobblestone streets, vibrant colonial-style buildings, and serene charm, had drawn visitors from all over. Yet, that afternoon, the tranquility was shattered by an unexpected storm. Rain lashed down relentlessly, transforming the streets into flowing streams and forcing pedestrians to seek refuge under awnings and doorways. Daniel Wilson, a 53-year-old businessman, navigated the narrow roads in his meticulously maintained Range Rover. A man of stature and achievement, Daniel was respected for his business acumen and professional success. Yet for some time an inexplicable void had settled within him. Material wealth had not filled the emptiness gnawing at his soul. As raindrops drummed against his windshield, Daniel drifted into his thoughts, contemplating the monotony of his carefully constructed life. As he turned a corner, Daniel had to brake abruptly. A traffic light turned red, and the sluggish flow of vehicles ahead moved cautiously through the rainwater pooling on the pavement. While waiting, a scene caught his attention. Huddled against a rain-soaked wall was a small figure, barely distinguishable in the downpour. At first, he thought it was just a shadow. Then, he realized it was a girl, no older than 7, completely drenched, clutching something close to her chest. Curiosity gave way to concern as Daniel leaned forward for a clearer look. The small bundle in her arms wasn't just any object, it was a baby. A girl no taller than his car window, standing alone in a storm, sheltering someone even more vulnerable. The sight gripped his heart in a way he didn't expect. Without hesitation, he pulled to the curb and turned off the engine. Stepping into the rain, the cold droplets soaked him instantly, but he didn't care. He approached the girl cautiously, keeping his voice steady, not wanting to startle her. "Hi there, sweetheart," Daniel said gently, raising his voice slightly to compete with the storm's roar. "What are you doing out here all by yourself?" The child looked up slowly, her wide eyes clouded with fear and exhaustion. Her thin arms clutched the baby so tightly it seemed as though she was holding on to the only thing tethering her to the world. Daniel knelt before her, trying to appear as unthreatening as possible. "Where are your parents?" he asked, his voice soft but firm, searching for some logical explanation for her situation. "I don't have any," she whispered, her words barely audible. "They left me." Her response struck Daniel like a blow to the chest. How could anyone abandon a child, especially one caring for an infant? He swallowed hard, trying to steady his emotions. "Who left you here?" he pressed, his concern now etched into every word. "Do you know their name?" After a long pause, the girl lowered her gaze to the ground. Her voice quivered as she answered, "The woman from the orphanage. She said she didn't want to look after me or my brother anymore." The words hung heavy in the air. Daniel felt a surge of anger and sorrow. An orphanage, a place meant to shelter and protect, had discarded her like she was nothing. The weight of what this child and her baby brother must have endured overwhelmed him. He knew he couldn't just walk away. "Let's get you out of this rain," he said softly, extending his hand to her. "I'll take you somewhere safe, and we'll figure this out together." For a moment, the girl hesitated, her eyes darting between Daniel's face and his outstretched hand. Something in his kind expression seemed to reassure her, and she finally reached out, her small hand trembling as it touched his. Together they walked to his car. Daniel opened the back door and helped her settle in, ensuring the baby was secure before sliding into the driver's seat. In the rearview mirror, Daniel watched the girl as she cradled the infant, murmuring soft words of comfort. Though soaked to the bone, her sole focus was on keeping the baby calm. Daniel's resolve hardened. Whatever storm this child had weathered, he was determined to see her and her brother through it. They deserved safety, dignity, and a future far removed from the shadows of their past. Daniel Wilson, a wealthy businessman, navigated the flooded streets of San Jose, his thoughts heavy and unsettled. The rain hammered relentlessly against his car, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was on the brink of a profound shift. The abandoned children in his backseat, a little girl, and a baby had already begun to change the trajectory of his carefully ordered world. The rain continued to fall, obscuring the winding streets of the city, while Daniel's mind raced with questions. In the rearview mirror, he could see Mia and her baby brother Henry sitting quietly. Except for the occasional muffled sob, the car was silent. He wanted to ask her what had happened, to piece together the story that had led to such heartbreak, but he knew he needed to tread carefully. The last thing he wanted was to overwhelm or frighten the young girl, who had clearly endured more than any child should. Finally, Daniel decided to stop at a small, familiar coffee shop. The quaint cafe was a place he frequented for its warmth and calm atmosphere. It seemed the perfect spot to provide some comfort and perhaps learn more about the children's plight. Pulling up outside the rustic building, he noted the soft glow of light spilling through its fogged windows. Grabbing an umbrella from the trunk, he made his way to the back door of the car. "Come on, sweetheart," he said gently, shielding them both from the rain. "Let's go inside and warm up a bit." Mia nodded, still clutching Henry protectively to her chest. As they entered the cafe, the aroma of freshly baked bread enveloped them, providing an immediate sense of refuge. Behind the counter, Mrs. Lauren, the middle-aged owner of the cafe, looked up in surprise at the drenched trio. "Daniel, what on earth is going on? Who are these kids?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "It's a long story," Lauren Daniel replied, leading Mia to a table near the fireplace. "But I could use your help. Could you bring us something warm to drink and a towel? These kids are freezing." "Of course, Daniel. I'll be right back," Lauren said, hurrying off toward the kitchen. Daniel helped Mia settle into a chair before carefully taking Henry from her arms. The baby felt impossibly small in his hands, and Daniel was struck by the fragility of the little life he held. Mia watched him closely, her wary eyes scanning his every move. "What's your name?" Daniel asked softly, hoping to ease her apprehension. "Mia," she replied, her voice no louder than a whisper. "And your brother?" he asked, glancing at the baby in his arms. "Henry," Mia said, her worried expression betraying the weight of responsibility she carried for someone so young. Daniel nodded, his heart aching for her. "Mia, can you tell me what happened? Why did the woman from the orphanage leave you and Henry out here?" Mia hesitated, her small hands gripping the edge of the table. Daniel remained silent, offering her the space to gather her thoughts. Moments later, Lauren returned with 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate and a soft towel. "Here you go," Lauren said kindly. "This should help warm you up." "Thank you," Daniel murmured, sliding one of the mugs toward Mia. She wrapped her hands around it but didn't drink right away. The tension between them hung heavy until, at last, Mia began to speak. "The woman from the orphanage said she couldn't take care of us anymore," she said haltingly. "She was angry all the time. She told me we were a burden and that no one wanted kids like us." Daniel's grip on the towel tightened as he listened. The pain in Mia's voice was almost unbearable. "She drove us into the city," Mia continued. "Then she stopped the car, told me to get out with Henry, and left. I tried to follow her, but she just drove away." As Mia finished, tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Daniel placed a steady hand on hers, offering reassurance. "Mia, you won't have to go back there," he promised, his voice firm but gentle. "But I need your help to understand what's happening at that orphanage. If they treated you and Henry like this, imagine what they might be doing to other children." Mia looked up, her tear-filled eyes reflecting a fragile mix of fear and hope. For the first time, she felt as though someone cared, someone who could help. "I trust you," she said quietly, her voice carrying a strength Daniel hadn't expected. "And I won't let you down," Daniel replied. "We'll figure this out together, and I'll make sure you and Henry are safe. That's a promise." Inside the cafe, as the storm continued to rage outside, an unspoken bond formed between them. Daniel, once a man consumed by his own emptiness, now felt a fierce determination to fight for Mia, Henry, and the countless other children who might be suffering in silence. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he couldn't turn back now. Whatever it took, he was ready. The storm raging over San Jose showed no signs of letting up. Heavy raindrops beat against the cafe's windows in a relentless rhythmic cascade. Inside, the soft glow of the fireplace and the welcoming scent of freshly brewed hot chocolate created a fragile sanctuary from the chaos outside. Daniel Wilson sat at a small table, his gaze fixed on the two children before him, Mia, a frail girl clutching a steaming mug, and her baby brother Henry, who rested peacefully in Daniel's lap. Mia's small hands trembled as they wrapped around the mug Mrs. Lauren had brought over moments earlier. She sipped cautiously, as though unfamiliar with such kindness. Her clothes were soaked, her expression guarded. Henry, no bigger than a bundle of cloth, slept soundly, his breath shallow yet steady. Daniel couldn't help but notice his sunken cheeks, a glaring testament to the hunger and neglect these children had endured. Daniel's thoughts raced, tangling with disbelief and anger. A man of action and practicality, he had faced countless challenges in his life, yet nothing could have prepared him for this. He was now responsible for two innocent lives, thrust upon him by a cruel twist of fate. As he studied Mia's face, he saw a hint of calm returning, but the fear in her eyes lingered like a shadow. "Mia," Daniel said gently, leaning forward, "can you tell me what happened?" His voice was soft, measured. He didn't want to rush her, knowing she needed time to trust him. "You're safe now," he added, his tone reassuring. Mia hesitated, her small fingers tightening around the mug. For a moment she seemed to wrestle with the decision to speak. Finally, with a deep, shaky breath, she began. Her voice was quiet, tinged with emotion. "Henry and I lived in an orphanage," she murmured, avoiding Daniel's gaze. "It was a big place with lots of kids, but the woman who ran it, she wasn't nice. She always said we were a burden, that no one wanted kids like us." Daniel felt a sharp pang in his chest. The weight of her words settled heavily on him. How could anyone say such cruel things to a child? But he remained silent, sensing she had more to share. "One day," Mia continued, her voice trembling, "Henry wouldn't stop crying. He was hungry, but she never gave us enough to eat. She got so mad, she said she was done with us." Mia's grip on the mug tightened as she fought to steady herself. "She put us in her car, drove us into the city, and stopped on a corner. She told me to get out, to take Henry, and that no one would care if we disappeared." Mrs. Lauren, who had been quietly tending to customers at the counter, paused mid-motion, her expression reflecting the growing tension in the room. She glanced at Daniel, whose face remained calm, but whose eyes betrayed his simmering anger. "She left us there," Mia whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I tried to follow, but she just drove away." Daniel clenched his jaw, his anger bubbling beneath the surface. The image of these two children abandoned in the cold rain stirred a protective instinct he hadn't known he possessed. He leaned forward, his voice firm yet comforting. "Mia," he asked, "do you remember the name of the orphanage, or where it's located?" Mia nodded hesitantly. "It's outside the city, on the road to the village near San Jose. They call it the House of Children." Daniel's mind raced. He had heard the name before, though it had never crossed his radar as anything of concern. Now he knew something was terribly wrong. "You were brave to tell me this," Daniel said, his tone steady, meeting Mia's tearful eyes. "I promise you we're going to figure out what's happening at that orphanage. And I swear to you, no one is going to hurt you or Henry ever again." Though Mia's shoulders remained hunched, Daniel saw a flicker of relief cross her face, as if a small weight had been lifted. But her voice remained cautious as she asked, "You're not going to send us back there, are you?" Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, Mia, never. I'll find another way to handle this." Mrs. Lauren approached then, setting a plate of warm cookies on the table. "Here you go, sweetheart," she said with a kind smile. "Eat up, they're all for you." Mia hesitated, but eventually reached for a cookie, nibbling it slowly. Watching her, Daniel felt the enormity of the situation weigh on him. These children needed more than a meal and a promise. They needed protection and care, something he was determined to provide. Pulling out his phone, Daniel made several calls. First, he contacted Commissioner James, a trusted friend with the authority to investigate the orphanage. Then, he dialed Jason Walker, his lawyer, to discuss the legal steps needed to ensure Mia and Henry's safety. As he ended the final call, Daniel's resolve deepened. He didn't know exactly where this path would lead, but one thing was certain: he would do whatever it took to protect these children and uncover the truth. The morning sun began to rise gently over San Jose, piercing through the remnants of storm clouds. Damp streets shimmered in the soft light, and the fresh air carried the earthy aroma of wet soil and scattered leaves. Inside Daniel Wilson's spacious, inviting apartment, an unusual stillness prevailed, a surreal calm after the storm. Daniel, already awake, leaned against the kitchen counter, the weight of the previous night still heavy on his mind. He hadn't slept much, his thoughts consumed with Mia and Henry and the unsettling truths they had shared. Though Daniel was a man rarely shaken, the plight of the two siblings had stirred something profound within him. He was certain that something sinister was hidden behind the walls of the little angel's home, and he was determined to uncover it. In the living room, Mia lay curled up on the oversized couch, cocooned in a soft blanket. Her face, serene in sleep, carried traces of the hardship she had endured. Daniel lingered a moment, watching her with a mix of sadness and responsibility. In the adjoining room, baby Henry slept soundly in a makeshift crib Daniel had assembled from whatever he could find. Determined not to waste another second, Daniel reached for his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. The line connected, and Commissioner James, a trusted friend and seasoned police officer, answered with his usual efficiency. "James, good morning. I need your help urgently," Daniel said, skipping pleasantries. "Morning, Wilson. What's going on?" James replied, his tone direct and professional. Daniel exhaled, steadying himself. "I found a young girl and her baby brother last night abandoned on the street. They're from a place called Little Angel's Home, and the girl told me some alarming things about it. I need you to look into this discreetly. Something doesn't sit right." James paused, likely processing the unexpected information. "Little Angel's Home? I've heard the name, but there's never been a formal complaint against them. I'll start digging, but Daniel, be careful. If this is as serious as it sounds, we might be dealing with some dangerous people," he warned. "I hear you," Daniel replied, his voice firm. "But these kids need help. If there's any truth to this, it has to stop. Thank you, James." After hanging up, Daniel allowed himself a moment of reflection. It was a small step, but an essential one. He returned to the kitchen and began preparing a simple breakfast for Mia and Henry, hoping to provide them with a semblance of comfort. As he buttered toast and poured juice, his mind kept returning to the mysterious Erica Bridges the woman Mia had described. What kind of person could run an orphanage and see children as nothing more than burdens? While he worked, the sound of soft footsteps drew his attention. Turning, he saw Mia standing in the doorway, wrapped tightly in her blanket. Her weary eyes, large and cautious, held an air of vulnerability yet unspoken strength. "Good morning," Mia, Daniel greeted warmly. "Did you sleep well?" Mia hesitated, then nodded shyly. "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Come sit down, I'm making breakfast. Henry's still asleep, so we've got time," Daniel said, guiding her to the table already set with a few plates. As Mia sat, she watched Daniel with quiet curiosity. To her, this was uncharted territory, an adult showing her kindness without expectation. Tentatively, she took a bite of toast, savoring the unfamiliar taste of something made with care. Daniel sat across from her, his tone gentle, as he broached the subject weighing on his mind. "Mia, can you tell me anything else about the orphanage? Anything you remember could help us figure out what's happening there?" Mia hesitated, her small hands clutching the edge of the table. After a moment she nodded, her voice soft but steady. "There were lots of kids like me," but some she paused, choosing her words carefully. Some were taken away, and we never saw them again. Erica said they found homes, but I didn't believe her. Daniel's chest tightened. The implication of her words was chilling. Children disappearing without explanation. This was far darker than he had anticipated. "Erica, she's the one in charge," Daniel asked, his tone calm but deliberate. Mia nodded. "Yes, Mrs. Erica. She didn't like me. She always said I was too much trouble, and Henry cried too much." Her voice quivered, and Daniel could see the pain of reliving those memories etched on her face. A mix of anger and resolve surged through Daniel. He couldn't ignore the growing evidence that something deeply wrong was happening at the orphanage. Yet, he knew he would need to move carefully. This was no ordinary case of neglect. Just as the weight of his thoughts pressed down, the phone rang. Daniel excused himself and answered quickly. Commissioner James's grave voice came through the line. "Daniel, I've been asking around discreetly, and it seems the little angel's home isn't what it appears to be. Rumors suggest they're involved in something much darker, possibly child trafficking," James said. Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Child trafficking," he repeated, the words almost too heavy to voice. "I knew this was serious, but this. We need to act fast, James. Those kids are in danger. We need evidence to shut this down and put everyone involved behind bars." "I'm with you," James assured him. "But we can't rush this. We need to tread carefully. I'll put a team together and start planning our next steps." Ending the call, Daniel returned to the kitchen, his resolve stronger than ever. As he looked at Mia, still nibbling on her toast, he silently vowed to see this through. No matter the risk, he would ensure she and Henry and every other child were safe. This fight had only just begun. "Can you keep the kids safe for now?" asked Commissioner James. "Yes, I'll make sure they're secure," Daniel Wilson replied firmly. "Let me know as soon as you have a plan." He ended the call, the weight of responsibility pressing heavier on his shoulders with every passing moment. Daniel walked back into the kitchen, where Mia sat quietly, her hands folded on the table. Her wide, searching eyes seemed to sense that something was wrong. Daniel knelt beside her, meeting her gaze with calm determination. "Mia," he began gently, "I promise I'll do everything I can to protect you and Henry. But I need your trust. Can you tell me everything you know about that orphanage?" His voice was steady, filled with both sincerity and urgency. "Every detail could help us save other kids too." Mia looked at him, her small frame visibly tense. Her eyes, a mix of fear and hope, searched his face for reassurance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she gave a small nod. "I'll tell you everything I know," she said, her voice carrying a hint of newfound determination. As Daniel listened closely to Mia's account, the depth of the situation began to take shape. The enormity of what he was stepping into was undeniable, but so was his resolve. He wasn't facing this alone. With Commissioner James's resources and Mia's courage, Daniel knew he had the strength to uncover the truth behind Erica Bridges and her sinister operations at the children's home. The investigation was just beginning, and Daniel understood the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But no matter what it took, he was prepared to see it through. Later that evening, on a call with his lawyer, Jason Walker, Daniel spoke with quiet conviction. "I'll handle everything," he assured. "Let's meet first thing tomorrow to discuss the details. In the meantime, make sure the kids are in a safe place." He thanked Jason and hung up, feeling an even stronger sense of purpose. He glanced back at Mia, now finishing her meal. She looked so small, yet her strength shone through in every hesitant move she made to trust him. Daniel knew this moment would define his next steps. "Mia," he said gently, his tone warm yet firm, "tonight you and Henry are staying with me. I'll take care of you both, and tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. Does that sound okay?" Mia looked up at him, her large, frightened eyes reflecting as much hope as fear. Slowly she nodded without a word. But in her silence, Daniel saw something shift, a glimmer of belief that maybe, just maybe, things could be okay. As the night deepened over San Jose, the storm outside began to ease. The relentless rain gave way to a tentative calm. But within Daniel's heart and mind, he knew the real storm was only just beginning. For Mia, for Henry, and for every child left voiceless in that dark orphanage, Daniel resolved to face it head-on. No matter the cost, he was ready to fight for them to be their shield in a world that had so cruelly failed them. The sun was already high in the sky, though its rays barely reached the narrow, rain-soaked streets of San Jose. Daniel Wilson sat quietly in his living room, a blend of tension and resolve simmering within him. Across the room, young Mia played intently with some toys he had picked up earlier that morning, while baby Henry slept soundly in a makeshift crib nearby. Despite the warmth and safety of his home, Daniel felt the weight of an impending storm not outside, but in the journey that lay ahead. The unsettling revelations Mia had shared about the orphanage, Little Angel's home, and the children who seemed to vanish without a trace haunted him. Daniel had spent hours poring over her words, piecing together the troubling narrative. He had already spoken with Commissioner James, who had begun a discreet investigation, but Daniel knew that wasn't enough. To uncover the truth, he needed to dig deeper on his own. Determined, Daniel grabbed a light jacket and a hat to shield himself from the glaring sun. Before leaving, he approached Mia, who sat cross-legged on the living room rug, piecing together a puzzle. "Mia," he said softly, kneeling down to her level, "I need to step out for a little while, but I promise I'll be back soon. You'll stay here with Henry, and Mrs. Lauren will come by to help you take care of him, okay?" Mia looked up at him, her young face a mixture of trust and unease. She nodded silently, her small hands pausing over the puzzle pieces. Daniel could see the lingering fear in her eyes, but he also sensed the beginning of something fragile yet vital: trust. "I'll be back soon," he promised, giving her a reassuring smile before heading out the door. Driving through the damp streets of San Jose, Daniel's thoughts raced. Worry for the children weighed heavily on him, but so did the urgent need to uncover what was really happening at Little Angel's home. He couldn't rely on rumors or fragmented accounts. He needed hard evidence, something undeniable to expose the truth about Erica Bridges and the shadowy operations of the orphanage. Daniel's first stop was City Hall. If there was a trail of irregularities, it would likely be hidden among the public records. As he stepped into the small, historic building, a receptionist greeted him with a polite smile. "Good morning, Mr. Wilson. How can I assist you today?" "Good morning," Daniel replied, keeping his tone steady and professional. "I'd like to access some records on an orphanage called Little Angel's Home. Specifically, I'm looking for details about its founding, current management, and any recorded complaints or irregularities." The receptionist blinked in mild surprise but nodded. "Of course. Please wait in the reading room. While I retrieve the files," she disappeared down a narrow hallway, leaving Daniel alone to gather his thoughts. The reading room was a quiet, cozy space filled with the faint scent of old paper and polished wood. Daniel sat down at a heavy table, his fingers tapping lightly against its surface as his mind replayed Mia's words. Missing children, Erica's cold indifference, and an institution that was supposed to protect yet seemed to harbor sinister secrets. Minutes later, the receptionist returned, her arms laden with yellowed folders and brittle documents. "Here's everything we have on Little Angel's home," she said, placing the stack before him. "Thank you," Daniel replied, wasting no time as he began to sift through the files. The earliest records painted an image of hope. The orphanage had been established nearly 2 decades ago by a philanthropist named Maria Velasco, who had used her personal fortune to create a sanctuary for orphaned and abandoned children. At first glance, the initiative seemed noble, a beacon of compassion. But as Daniel delved deeper, the narrative shifted. Around 5 years ago, Maria Velasco had passed away under unclear circumstances. Control of the orphanage was handed over to a woman named Erica Bridges. Seeing that name in print sent a chill through Daniel. It was the same name Mia had spoken of with such fear. The records on Erica were sparse. She had seized full control of the orphanage after Maria's death, but her background remained shadowy. However, one detail stood out. Erica appeared to have connections with several influential figures, including prominent business people and local politicians. Those ties might explain why, despite troubling rumors, no serious investigations had been launched into her activities. As Daniel flipped through more pages, his eyes landed on a damning report. An internal document from a former employee detailed how Erica frequently moved children without adhering to legal protocols. These relocations lacked proper documentation, and the children involved simply vanished without explanation. The report didn't name its author, but it noted that the individual had attempted to report these irregularities before being abruptly dismissed. Daniel felt his pulse quicken. This could be a critical lead. Whoever wrote that report might hold the key to unraveling the orphanage's dark secrets. Gathering his notes, Daniel thanked the receptionist and stepped back into the sunlight, his mind racing. He now understood the scale of the battle he was stepping into. Erica Bridges wasn't just another caretaker, she was a manipulative and connected adversary, one who wouldn't go down without a fight. As Daniel climbed into his car and started the engine, he glanced at the papers on the passenger seat. The shadows surrounding Little Angel's home were deep and dangerous, but Daniel was resolute. Whatever it took, he would uncover the truth and ensure no more children were lost to Erica's web of deceit. Back in his car, Daniel Wilson picked up his phone and called Commissioner James. "James, I'm leaving City Hall now. I've uncovered some troubling information about the children's home and Erica Bridges. It appears she has powerful connections and might be involved in something much bigger." "Have you made any progress with the investigation?" Daniel asked, his tone edged with growing urgency. "Wilson, we're working on it. I've received some intel from reliable sources confirming your suspicions. It seems Erica is using the orphanage as a front for illegal activities, possibly even child trafficking. But we need solid evidence to move forward. I'm assembling a team to dig deeper. But we have to keep this low profile." "Erica has eyes and ears everywhere," James replied, his voice steady but grave. "Understood, James. I'll keep investigating on my end. Let me know as soon as you have something concrete," Daniel said before ending the call. He leaned back in his seat, letting out a long breath. Time was running out. Erica Bridges and her network of accomplices were likely already covering their tracks. Acting swiftly was vital, but Daniel knew a hasty move could jeopardize everything. He had to be precise, careful, and above all, smart to protect Mia, Henry, and the countless other children at risk. As Daniel drove back to his apartment, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He felt the weight of the new information pressing on him, but also a renewed determination to unmask Erica's criminal activities. He knew every step had to be calculated. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth, it was about safeguarding lives.